Recording. Hey, good afternoon. It is April 10th. This is Tom Hayes with Upbeat and my co-host, Rebecca Tripp. And we're really looking forward to today. We have a great guest, somebody that I found on the internet by reading the Epoch Times and was extremely impressed with the article. Rebecca, I shared the article with you. First of all, your haircut is wonderful today.
Well, thank you.
Fresh, well, let me introduce Robert. Robert Cooperman is a guy that we found on the Epoch Times. He has a doctorate, and he's not only a playwright, but also can I call you a drama critic? Is that appropriate, Robert?
Yeah, I'm very critical of a lot of drama.
Yeah.
So that would work perfectly.
And originally from New York City, now living in Columbus, Ohio. And are you teaching there? Or?
Right now, I'm not teaching.
Okay.
But I had been an adjunct at Ohio University for a number of years.
Okay, in the drama department? Or?
Yes, both. I had a position in both the English department and the drama department.
Excellent. And right now, let's give a plug for your one-man play.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm doing a one-man play at the Abbey Theatre of Dublin. That would be Dublin, Ohio. Lest you think I'm talking to you from Ireland. It's a play entitled How to Be a Trainer. And that's what I've been doing for the last 30 years is I am a professional trainer for both the corporate world and now I work in the public sector. And this is a play about kind of my parody of that which I've been doing for 30 years. So it's a one-man play, about 25 minutes, and it's available to be live streamed. If anybody's interested, you can go to the Abbey Theatre of Dublin. Just look up the Abbey Theatre of Dublin website, and you'll see where to buy tickets.
Fabulous. And when does it go? When does it go up?
April 16th and 17th. Just a brief engagement before I move on and not do any more engagements. So it's a brief engagement. It begins at 7 p.m. both
Wonderful.
nights.
Have you, is this your first one-man production or?
Yes, it's my first one-man production. I didn't think I was going to be the actor in it, but the director loved the play and he said, nobody else is going to be able to play this role. He says, this is you. I said, that's true. And if I can't fake sincerity, I can't do anything. So I'm doing it. So I'm struggling to remember the lines because I'm not 30 anymore.
Yeah, that happens, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No teleprompter like our presidents are using.
Well, actually, the director said we might be able to set up a teleprompter for you, and I'm not too proud to say I'll take it,
Exactly.
but I'm really working hard to learn my lines.
Wonderful. So now, when you say trainer, that rings a bell for both. Rebecca and myself, because I did a lot of corporate speaking. I was a sales trainer for a Fortune 500 company, Fujifilm, for years. So when you say training, what kind of training?
Oh, like you've mentioned, mostly soft skill training, and also, some quote unquote technical training. When we introduce a new system of some kind or a new application, I will offer training on that, preparing training materials, or actually leading the class myself. And as I said, also, the typical customer service, emotional intelligence, which is very ironic that I'm the one teaching that, if you ever get to know me. So
I'm curious about that. Do you get that from the communications part of what you do, the English part,
well, I've always loved to teach. I have always wanted to be a teacher. So even when I was a little boy, I knew I wanted to be in front of a class. And let's face it, I mean, I come from a theater background, and training and acting are both forms of performance.
Absolutely.
So I really enjoy that, because to me it's like another theatrical experience. So yeah, I mean, and since I love English literature and drama in particular, it's a way for me to enjoy both worlds. I'm not teaching English literature, of course, at my job, but I am teaching things that I did teach in college, which were basic composition skills and basic grammar and things like that people have long forgotten.
And so needed. Well, Rebecca, that resonates. Rebecca is also a teacher and also a trainer.
Excellent.
And she spent years as a flight attendant, has a book called The Secrets of a Metaphysical Flight Attendant. So,
Really?
so in her own way, she was in front of audiences. Well, Rebecca, I'm going to shut up and let you
Years
talk.
ago, too, Robert, I was fortunate enough to study acting with Stella Adler.
Oh wow, that's a
Yeah.
big name.
Oh,
Yeah.
she was amazing. She was amazing. It was more like a course in life. You know, she was such a diva and she was so powerful and she had such presence. But yeah, that was really fun. It made me realize that the art of acting is so metaphysical and, you know, takes you to the higher realms.
Absolutely. Well, it should. Right.
Yes, it's very exciting. So yeah, I'm glad
Hopefully
you
the
did that.
script that you're reciting takes you to the higher realms too.
Well, that was why I didn't pursue an acting career, because I really didn't want to be a B actress reading horrible scripts or, you know, soap opera scripts. So I left to
Right.
talk about my own things.
Right.
But
Very good.
it was great training. Yeah.
Oh,
So I
absolutely.
really appreciate what you do.
Well,
Thank
that takes us to the meat of why I called you. I'm going to.
Oh, I'm a vegetarian. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Great.
Go ahead.
We got a guy that's a thing. So it looks like I'm sharing the screen here. I'm going to try to go to messages. Again, most of this is new to me. There's your article. Here we go. All right. Can you guys see that?
No.
I cannot.
No. All right. Well, let me go back.
Did you share your screen?
Yeah, I thought I did. Let me go back here and see if I can just go between windows and find me again. No. All right. I just pray I don't lose you guys, because that has happened in the past. Let's see. Okay. Meeting, okay, here we go. All right. Oh, don't tell me I lost you.
You didn't lose us.
No, okay, good. All right.
No.
Well, I can't.
We're here.
I can no longer see you. Well, look, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to read it.
Okay.
This what brought me to you in the first place. The title of the article. First of all, folks, this was in the Epic Times. I'm sure that if you just kind of put the title in and look on, it'll pull it up. Will it, Robert? Will you?
Yeah, it should. It should.
Okay. So the title was The Antidote to the Theater of Misery, the Natural Theater. And the first thing you do, I think you take a quote from the play, the Drowsy Chaperone. Is that right?
Yes, the Drowsy Chaperone. Yes.
Can you tell us what that was about?
Oh, that's the play is a wonderful musical about a kind of a homebody whose life revolves around this record album. For those of you who are young out there, there were these things called record albums, and this record album is of a musical called The Drowsy Chaperone, and he plays it constantly because apparently it gives him some meaning to his life. And as the play goes on, whenever he puts the record on the spindle and puts the needle on the record, then the characters come to life and they come on stage and they perform what's going on the record. And when he takes it off, it's back to real life. And the quote I used was from the very end speech that this person gives. He doesn't even have a name in the show. He's called Man in Chair. And he talks about, I actually have the article here too, and he, because God forbid I should remember what I wrote. And he says, it's not a perfect show, but none of that matters. It does what a musical is supposed to do: give you a little tune to carry in your head, a little something to help you escape from the dreary horrors of the real world. And I remember sitting there watching this play that I was thoroughly enjoying, because it was so campy and so much of almost a satire on those Busby Berkeley musicals and all the tropes that you saw in those early musicals, you know, the G-Men and things like that. And I hear this line and I say to myself, well, you know, that's what I'm here for. I'm here, I'm enjoying myself because I want to escape from the dreary horrors of the real world. And I said, you know, this is so typical of the kind of the modern sensibility, that this world is so just god awful, particularly this United States of America thing, that it's so awful that we have to figure out some way to escape. And I guess if it's not through drugs or alcohol or meaningless sex, you might as well go to this musical and realize now they told us why we're there. So that's why I started off the article with that quote.
Yeah, and I'm reading the paragraph now. Again, I'm quoting you. For years, we've been told that the world, and especially the United States, is a rotten place, defined by bigotry, hypocrisy, and despair. This cheery view is often reflected in our theory where miserable malcontents, I just love it, spend precious stage time lamenting their inadequacies and victimization, their failed relationships and addictions. About the best we can hope for, according to another inexplicably popular show, is to be next to normal. And
that's rather beautiful, isn't it? Don't you think?
Oh, you caught me. Once I read that paragraph, I said, oh my God, somebody I could relate to. And so you go on and you say, despite our being bombarded by this message day in and day out, it does not have to be the prevailing view in this country, and certainly not one fostered by the arts. So this is, again, Rebecca and I have known each other since what, about 2004, Rebecca?
It's been a long time. I'd say it was 2004 we first met.
Yes, yeah. And I met Rebecca because she was teaching a course that I wanted to take for quite a while. She was teaching civil mind control. And it's kind of funny because I was performing at a college, a small college in Vermont. And I had already been, in those days, what was it, the 70s that probably 80s, that civil mind control was on the tips of most people's tongues and
Very
minds.
Popular in the early 70s. It started in 1966.
Yeah, and so I had done this crazy, wacky magic / comedy show, and I finished, and all of a sudden this gentleman walks in at the end of my show and walks up and said, I just had a feeling that you might know a ventriloquist. And I looked at the guy like, I said, well, how did you get that feeling? Were you at the show? He goes, no. He says, I was just walking by and I got that feeling. And I said, well, you're 100% right. I know a couple of them. And I said, why do you want to know? And he said, well, I'm teaching a course in ethics here at the college. And I want to use the puppet to have a dialogue with and go over some of the philosophies and schools of ethics. So having gone to a Catholic school, I was kind of familiar with people like Kant's categorical imperative. And when I started dropping terms, he looked at me like, how is this guy with rubber chickens and magic tricks? How is he asking me about Kant and or the Aristotelian Nicomachean ethics? And he says, well, and we got into this big thing, and he says, I took a course in civil mind control, and he says, I just am tuned into things like that. And he said, in fact, he says, I wrote my thesis using civil mind control. He says, of course, I had to come up with a topic which is difficult in itself because there's so many topics that are already taken. He says, so I went into civil mind training and dropped back into a meditation. And he says, I would count backwards from 10 and imagining that I was on an elevator. And when I got past 1, I went into 0 and I ended up in a basement. I could see it in my mind. And at the end of the basement, there was this long hallway and there was a room. And he says, and I would go into the room and there was a huge library and there were entities within this room. And they went over, I sat down, they went over, they pulled a book off the shelf, they put it down in front of me, and it was the topic. They had given it to me. And he says, every day I went back, and he says, he says, stole my thesis by having these entities show me chapter by chapter, day by day, page by page, and I would simply transcribe it, and hence I'm a PhD. So that was enough for me to say, the fact that this guy knew that I knew a ventriloquist and that he got his thesis, I should investigate. So for years I wanted to do that, and then one day I opened up either an airplane magazine or something, and I found Rebecca advertising her course, and then there we go. I'll let you say something a little.
The rest is history,
on it.
as they say.
Yeah.
So Rebecca, was it a 2-day course, Rebecca?
2-day course, getting it down to that alpha level on command. And, you know, Tom and I both believe that intuition is one of your most valuable senses right now in these times. And I know you're a very intuitive person, I'm sure, Robert.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm
So
interested in, yeah, I'm sorry.
More about your play, because you were talking about that got your attention with what they were saying about just filling your mind with some mindless thing to keep you occupied. And that triggered you to go on and write your play?
Oh, no, actually, it's not. It wasn't related to that. But by seeing that show, it kind of made me think more about the kind of work that I want to do. You know, you may know this, that I run a theater company here in Columbus, Ohio. And it's called Stage Right Theatrics. And I started it in 2017 because I was getting a little tired of watching these plays, musicals, whatever, where we are again told that life is so unbearable. And I just felt that there was what I felt was a left-wing stance to these plays. And it's hard to describe only because I can't describe it well. And that is, it's almost as though this left-wing mindset is fixed in some way. And artists just naturally now write within that mindset. And so it bothered me because I was like, where's the other point of view? Because we talk a lot about, diversity. And I don't hear any diversity out there at all on stage. I don't hear any of it.
Precisely.
And so how about if we put what I was then calling the conservative voice and put that on stage and see how that flies. And I've been very fortunate in that while Columbus, Ohio, I mean, it's not New York. Well, it's not shut down, but it's not, it's not New York. It's not Chicago. It's not LA. So it's not one of your major theater centers, but we do have 30 plus theaters here.
What?
Yeah, we do have about 30 plus. It's about 25 too many, but seriously, there's only so many times you can go to see Annie. But there's a lot of, and it's a heavily community theater. It's a heavy community theater town. But we do have some theater that's actually more thought-provoking. And we do have an LGBT theater here. And we do have a South Asian theater here. And we do have a Black theater here. So my next natural question was, okay, those are all acceptable. How about the conservative voice? So that's why I started this company called, very cleverly, as I'm sure you noted, Stage Right. And I put the first production that I did was the Conservative Theater Festival. Now, I must admit that I was doing a podcast for a little while called Stage Right. Okay, so I'm not that original. So I was doing this podcast, and I was talking about conservatives in theater. And as you can imagine, there wasn't a lot to talk about, but I did find a young woman who was a theater professional from Philadelphia. And she put on a festival in 2012 called the Republican Theater Festival. Now, I hate the name because I don't want to tie this to a political party. But that's what she did, because she too said, and she was a liberal, she too said that she was sick and tired of going and seeing the same point of view over and over and over again, and she'd like to see something different. So she took a chance and she produced this festival, and I got to interview her a few years later, but I interviewed her for my podcast, and she was blackballed from a number of theaters in Philadelphia. And for me, that's a challenge. So I just said, I'm going to try this in Columbus, Ohio. We've got all these theaters. Why not? And the Conservative Theater Festival was very popular for the one night I was able to do it, because I was fronting all the money for this. So I did one night, and it became known and became popular. And then slowly we've started to get more attention. And now I'm in a place where, I mean, we still are striving to get some attention, and people still dismiss us. But I'm so delighted that things like the Epoch Times came along. They solicited me twice.
Wow.
You know, because about a year ago, I was in. I got a call from their arts, one of their arts reporters who wanted to interview me about conservative theater, and then the arts editor got in touch with me not that long ago and said, "We'd like you to be a contributor to the Epoch Times." And I've been reading the Epoch Times now for a while, so I was really thrilled. So that's the genesis of the article that you were discussing, and I'm actually writing another piece for them now. So I guess I'm sure I strayed on my point here.
No, you're spot on. This is
fabulous. Am I spot on? Okay, good. So that's really how it all started for me. And as I saw, going back to the Drowsy Chaperone, as I saw this, I was saying, well, this just plays right into the things I've been thinking about now for a number of years, and the kinds of things that my festival is trying to fight against. We do put on other shows other than the festival. We do the festival every year, and this year we just had our 5th festival. And what I was really thrilled about, and this is ironic, is that because of COVID, I couldn't have anybody in the theater, but I was able to live stream it. And I insisted that it be live streamed. And as a result, we had people from all over this country and a few people from outside this country watching and learning about what I'm trying to do. And so in that ironic way, COVID has been a boon for stage right theatrics. We also do, I'm sorry, I'm from New York, we'll keep going.
You're going exactly where I wanted you to. I mean, you're going in a direction I wasn't even capable of asking these questions. I do want to ask you, what play did you put up when you first launched?
We did 6 short plays, and that has been the way we've done it for the past 5 years. We solicit scripts. I get scripts from all over the country, and I select 6 of what I consider to be the best. And every once in a while we put on one of mine, because let's face it, it's good to be the king. And we put on 6 short plays. The plays can't be longer than about 20 minutes each. The number in the cast can't be any more than 4 or 5. I may change that up next year, because one of the problems is I get a lot of scripts, but I don't get a ton of great scripts or even good scripts. Playwriting, I mean, to me, like everything else, I mean, there are people who can do it well, and then there is everybody else who really can't. And I'm kind of sick and tired of everything being wonderful, because anything anybody writes is wonderful and it's art, and it's really not. And so I'm going to be a little bit more selective this coming year, with what I pick. And if that means that I'm only producing 4 plays, but they're really good, I'd rather do that than 6 plays where 3 are lousy.
Exactly.
So,
now, do you get any flack from the left for what you're doing, or do they leave you alone?
No, nobody leaves me alone. Well, I would say that when I started, there was lots of flack from the local theater community, because as you can imagine, they don't think like me. So there was a lot of flack, and there was a lot of nastiness in social media, and not only from the local community, but from playwright communities. What I was trying to join on Facebook, a playwrights group, and they're just unmerciful. So right now, I let it roll off my back. I think that at this point, at least locally, people realize that I hate to say it like this, I'm going to sound terribly egotistical, but I'm kind of a force to be reckoned with. Nice. Because I am getting national notice.
Yes.
The Epoch Times being one, but not the only one. And everybody else is, not everybody else, but many of the others are just wallowing in anonymity. So they can scream all they want from the comfort of their living room. I'm going to do what I'm doing, and I'm getting noticed. So, yes, I've got plenty of flack, still do, but it's really rolling off my shoulder now.
Well, and it should make you feel even more empowered that you're getting a reaction from them. You're getting them to react. If you were nothing, they wouldn't even do that. But you're obviously a threat. And of course, any of these words that you've come up with, especially in, can I read the next paragraph?
You can read it. If I wrote it, you can read it.
All right. The natural theater takes its cue from the multiple meanings of the word natural, starting with its use by our country's founding generation. We've all read, quote, end quote, I hope, the Declaration of Independence, which references, quote, the laws of nature and of nature's God, end quote. These laws endow all of us, quote, yes, all of us, end quote, with our natural, unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This forms the philosophical underpinning of our nation, from which we get the Constitution, as well as our unique and unprecedented approach to freedom. And this is so nice. I was under pressure here that they were going to hold me to a 40-minute time limit. I just got a gift from Zoom. They love it, and they're going to give us more time.
Wonderful. I did see that pop up.
So
Wonderful.
evidently we they haven't canceled us yet, Robert.
That's great. That's great. It's only a matter of time, but it's great right now.
Yes. So exactly. So this is, I want to. There's an element that Rebecca and I reach sometimes that we have a little friction. It's a little like a speed bump on the road that we get to the point where Rebecca will say to me, "Oh, why bother? They're not going to listen to us. Just let them be." And we don't. And then my thing is what you're saying here, and what you're finding is know that we have to continue to be a voice. And one of the things that that last summer I had a series of phone calls which shocked me. I've had calls from friends that I hadn't heard from in years, thinking that we were going to have a wonderful get together. And it always degenerated into an argument that they were leftist leaning. They wanted to challenge me. And, I won't talk about the topic because I don't want to, it's so overspent, but it has 3 letters. Well, the first one is a B and the last one is an M. And and there's an L in the middle. But anyway,
I'll figure it out at some point.
Yeah. So I got away from it. I would report back to Rebecca my frustration, and then I said, I don't know are you familiar with Robert McKee? He wrote this great screenplay guy. Wrote a bunch of books on screenplay.
I'm afraid I'm not familiar.
All right. Anyway, he wrote a book about this thick called Dialogue. And imagine a book that thick about dialogue. And he said, no, there are 3 levels of dialogue. There's the words that come out of the individual's mouth. Below that, there's their agenda, what they're thinking. And even below that, there's a dialogue on a subconscious level that they're probably not even aware of. Mm-hmm. And so I said, being trained in that and being a trainer, especially in sales, you learn that the most important thing in sales is to listen. And so I started to realize that listening to them, that it wasn't this philosophy or this attitude or the topic that they were talking about. There was something deeper than that, why they were so exercised about this. And I said, Rebecca, there's a mindset going on here. And you just mentioned the word a few moments ago. There's a mindset that wants to engage in controversy, that wants to lean toward a victimization. So I started to qualify these people and say, basically, listen, before I'll go with you, but I got to establish a mindset first. Do you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? Do you see the world as a platform where you can actualize yourself, where you can create things like wealth or information or knowledge or wisdom or generosity or anything else? Or do you see it as kind of hopeless, that everything is taken, we know who has it, and that the only way for you to get any of that would be to either take it or break it? And so if we can't get past that mindset, we have nothing to discuss. So what you've pointed out here is exactly what you just said a few minutes ago. This mindset, the world is hopeless. We're all victims, and defined by bigotry, hypocrisy, and despair. And I'm going to shut up.
Well, yeah. The whole point of natural theater, and by the way, I've known for a while that this whole the whole title of conservative theater. I would always say we were the only conservative theater in the country, and it started to kind of puzzle me a little bit because I was like, I wonder, and others had pointed this out actually, but being who I am, I have to wait until I figure it out, regardless of what anybody else says. And I said, maybe the whole term conservative theater is not the best term. Maybe it's a little alienating to people. So is there a way I can express these values without using the term conservative theater? And I'm always going to call it the Conservative Theater Festival. That's what it's known as. I've actually trademarked it, so that stays. But as I describe what it is I do, is there a way I can make these points without using the word conservative? And I was thinking about it for a long time, and I was trying to get all this fancy stuff in my head, the new originalism. And I'm thinking, and I kept tying it back to the founding of this country, because there's a philosophy there that to me is, number one, it's not going anywhere. This philosophy is true. The philosophy that we are capable by our reason, right, to lead our lives in the way we see fit, and the purpose of government is very, very limited, but basically just to protect those rights. And those rights are God-given. However you want to say it. If you don't like God, you could say natural, nature-given, however you want to say it. These are given to us prior to the existence of government. So we're born with that. We are born free. And so in that respect, okay, so how can I express that without using the word conservative? And I was actually reading a book by Professor Thomas West called Vindicating the Founders. It was actually written at the end of the 20th century. And where he sees where where scholarship is going, and the antagonism that the academia has for the American founding and for this country in general, mostly based on this idea that we were just complete slave owners, and that was it. We had nothing else good about us. We just were slave owners. But without ever thinking that because of the philosophy of the founders, we have in the first time in the world the ability to remove slavery from the planet based on a philosophy of every man is free, every woman is free, except the prostitute. But anyway, so I had to throw that in there. Anyway, so I came up, while reading this person's book, I came up with the natural theater. And that's what I pitched when Epic Times wrote to me, and I pitched that, and the editor liked it. And so that's where this came from. I'm sorry that was so long-winded, but that's where it came from. The natural theater.
And Rebecca,
the biggest, I love what you're saying about, I think people have forgotten that it is their birthright to be free, to be sovereign. And it does, I am just blown away with what we're going through right now, to see how many people just quietly accept being controlled and told what to do, and
Right.
Giving up freedoms.
Right. And what's also scary, I'm sorry, Rebecca, I'm from New York, we interrupt. I apologize.
What were you gonna say?
What's also very scary is that while a segment of the population may have forgotten this,
Right.
we have a new generation that's not being taught this.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And they have been programmed. But you know, the Silva training is all about programming.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you a quick story. When I was
Yeah.
giving a seminar in Denver many years ago, this young waiter was waiting on me when I was having breakfast. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I'm teaching people how to get down to the alpha level of consciousness on command so they can, be in command of their lives in a better way. And he said, "Oh, that's so important." I said, "How do you know that?" He said, "Because I know there's coming a day when the government's just going to take over our minds."
Mm.
I was really surprised. The guy was only in his 20s, and this was
Wow.
probably in around, 2005 or six. And
Wow.
he knew
He
what was
sensed it.
going
He
on.
sensed it.
He said,
Yeah.
if you don't learn how to go meditate on your own, you won't be able to figure it out. He
Hmm.
knew that. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, I also believe that there is a segment of this population that is not a accepting of what's going on now, and they're just not heard.
Right. They're quiet.
I think, I mean, maybe I'm should be fitted for a straitjacket, but and with the weight I've gained lately, you better bring a big one. I really think that when we talk about what's naturally ours and what's God or nature given, I don't think that can be breached. In other words, I think if you leave people to their own devices, they're going to figure this out. And that's the hope I have, because reasonable people realize that we are going too far right now. When I read today that the president is formulating a quote unquote bipartisan commission to study if the Supreme Court is too far to the right,
Wow.
there's got to be people who say, who know, who believe this is just wrong and very much against the will of the people. For all the years, we had a
I don't
left
think
wing
people,
Supreme Court.
but do you think they even realize how censored things are with YouTube, all the main networks only
You know,
only put out news in one direction?
I think people, by and large, do see that. And I think they fall into two camps. They either don't care or agree with it, or they're afraid to say anything about it, because we've become a culture where disagreement becomes the source of violence.
Right.
And this is, I don't know if you're aware of the motto for my theater company. It is disagreement does not equal
Yes,
hate.
I
And
love
I've
it.
trademarked that too. And
Yeah, would you
see,
say
that's
repeat that again so everybody gets that?
disagreement does not equal hate. And I think that no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, you can agree with that, or at least you can pay lip service to it. Now, I have a number of people who act in my companies who perform for me, and believe me, it's not easy to get performers. It's been a little easier, but at first, I had to beg, borrow, and steal to get people to work with me. And I always tell people, number one, I'm not looking for people to join my company because they agree with me. I'm looking for people to join my company that because they love theater. That's the criteria that binds us. Criterion that binds us. The love of theater. Everything else for me is superfluous. I don't care. I don't care what color you are. I don't care who you're sleeping with at the time. I don't care. I just care that you like theater. And that has slowly gotten to people, that they're more willing to work with me, but still it's tough. But when I do have people who disagree with me, and they love to tell you this right up front, I'm very liberal, but I will work with your company. Okay, I'm delighted, and I don't care that you're very liberal. Um, but they come to realize that, number one, I treat them like professionals and like people. Number two, we don't sit around and discuss politics. We perform plays. We don't discuss politics at rehearsal. We don't discuss politics at all. We just produce plays. So I was looking for a way that I can get people from all sides of the political spectrum to at least listen to me. Conservative theater started closing doors, I felt. But the natural theater, people say, oh, what's that? You know, and I don't think I do ever use the word conservative when describing the natural theater. I'm hearkening back to the founding of this country, which in theory, everybody in this country, or most people in this country, has an affinity for. We'll see how it goes, but I'm very excited that the Epoch Times published this. And as I said, I've got something that I'm working on now, which talks again about, I'm going to do a series of articles, hopefully, on natural theater.
Wonderful.
And the one I'm working on now is actually about Oedipus Rex.
Yeah, I was I'm at that point in the article I'm looking at, and yeah, you're going back to plays, but you know, I just like to, you say here the protagonists of the natural theater are not defined by their victimization,
right,
but by their heroic qualities. Oh, and you put in parentheses, oh, to have heroes again,
right,
and capacity for self-reflection, which Rebecca, you know, in Silver Mind Control, that's a lot of what it's about. These characters do not seek refuge by declaring the world either mad or absurd, and thus fall victim to it, but rather by striving to understand why their lonely stance is worth the struggle, and what that struggle means in a larger sense for the furthering of liberty that is natural to humankind. Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's the, and you know, when I describe natural theater, I don't want people to think, well, it's only theater that's been written since 1776. I mean, we have examples of natural theater prior to that, in my opinion. And so the editor asked me to write something about Oedipus Rex, which I'm writing now, and I'm trying to show that he is only a victim of his own making. You know, well, to this extent, I mean, clearly the oracle said, right, the Godhead said that he was going to do these very foul things. But I'm trying to show that he actually makes one decision that is of his own free will, and that is the decision not to commit suicide, but rather to blind himself and go on living. And he actually fights the chorus, who said to him, "You're better off dead." And he says, "No, I'm not. Don't tell me that." So even for the blinded and dismayed Oedipus, life still holds value. And you know, and he knows that he must leave Thebes because if he stays, besides the fact that he'd be, you know, alienated, you know, he can't stay there and have Thebes thrive. So for him, it's bigger than himself. I'm working on it. That's why it sounds sketchy, but I'm still working on it. But
well, you know, it's a lot of this sounds like Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, I mean, and this is timeless, you know, since Greek drama, since before, you know, when we had an oral tradition, these stories were worked out in the sense of, as you say, with the natural thing, there's an innate sense of what is heroic. There's an innate sense. See, those terms, we're talking heresy today when we start talking innate.
Right.
You know, I'm getting the chills now because I'm watching the destruction of my, the slow destruction of my country, the slow destruction of our culture. There's a slow destruction of our values, and the denunciation of what it is to be human, what the Greeks saw, you know, what not only Western philosophy, but Eastern philosophy as well. And the power of the individual, the power of virtue, the power of creativity. All of those powers are now being negated, as I said, when all of a sudden I find these people wanting to embattle and talk about Kant and system and the world. And so leading to the conclusion, totally diametrically opposed to what you're saying, that there's no hope.
Right.
we are simply puppets. We are simply pawns in this grand scheme. And the only way we can do it is to tear down the system so that the system will take the individual to the next level.
Right, right. That's very scary. And it's going on. And look, this has been going on, as you mentioned, slowly for many, many years. You know, we were in the 20th century. We were introduced to this idea that of existentialism, and that man's free will is such that there is no order to anything. And in the theater world, you know, we have the theater of the absurd. Right. But this has been going, you know, the fact of the matter is, you can see echoes of things like the theater of the absurd in Shakespeare. You know, life is an endless tale told by an idiot signifying nothing. You can see that. You can see the whole idea of nothingness, which Sartre kind of brought to the forefront in the, you know, in the 20th century. But you hear that, I mean, nothing being the operative word in King Lear. So you hear echoes of that, but the thing is that while that's true, there's also always redemption in things like Shakespeare and the earlier plays. So you can have as much horror and fear of nothingness as you like, but there'll always be a redemption. And that's as you mentioned, there is no redemption and no hope. And I mean, that, to me, that just can't sustain itself forever. It just can't.
Have you thought that their true agenda is to wipe out a lot of mankind?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we can't get our heads around it because we don't think like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've thought of that. Yeah, it's just a path for destruction with, in my opinion, no redemption at the end of the journey.
Well, when they first locked everyone down, all they talked about was, we're worried you're going to get sick. Well, what about the psychological, spiritual, and financial fallout? They never, ever, ever talked about it.
No.
It's irrelevant.
Because it was all about control.
Exactly. And everybody just went for it without ever questioning, well, how are our children going to psychologically survive living like this? Or, you know, all kinds of things that came up, but nobody talks about it.
Yeah, I know, I agree. And I think it was, even living in Ohio, because thank God I'm not in New York anymore.
Oh.
But living in Ohio, you know, our governor, he's a Republican, but I mean, he's really very wishy-washy, and, you know, and still maintain many of the practices that the left put in place from COVID, that the blue states put in place. Of course, we push back, not me personally, but people push back, and we're terribly ridiculed in the papers. But our local paper, which is our only paper, the Columbus Dispatch, has become a left-wing rag now. So, and I'm sorry, that is redundant. Left-wing rag. But
I love your sense of humor.
Yeah, thank you. But it's you know, you're absolutely right. It's just a shame. And yet, again, I always try to have a positive. I mean, I guess that's why why I'm studying or trying to come up with the best way to talk about natural theater, because at heart I am positive and an optimist. And I do think people will naturally repel this. I mean, there's going to come a point where you're going to push people too far, in my opinion.
Exactly. You know, I, for years, had been an independent. However, there were many, not leftist, but liberal ideas I adhered to. Yes. And in fact, I voted Democratic before the turn of the century, and actually abstained for years. I did vote. I voted for myself because I didn't like what was out there. But, you know, I found myself voting, going conservative. Mm-hmm. And I gave the credit to this leftist. I came, you know, I know that that's a common term, but I said, I had to make the distinction. I said to people, these aren't liberals, these are leftists. Right. And right. I said, they pushed me to the right. They push every day. In fact, somebody said to me today, I'm a comedian, and drawing a blank on his name right now, but politically incorrect.
Oh, Maher? Bill
Bill Maher.
Maher?
All of a sudden, Bill Maher is chastising his own party,
Right.
telling them we're going too far.
Right.
You are starting to destroy our cities. You don't want police. You're promoting anarchy. You're promoting destruction. You complain about everything. You whine about everything, and you're going to push it too far. And they are lately. Rebecca, tell them where we are. What do we say every single day? They're going to what themselves? They're going to destroy themselves.
Self-destruct. Yeah.
They're eating their own. They're starting to eat their own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is a wonderful thing to watch, but I don't want to see the country destroyed while they're doing it.
Well, that's the thing. Will there be anything left by the time they've finished destroying themselves? You know,
right.
It's crazy.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Can I read? I'd like to.
I love it. To me, it's like a bedtime story. You keep reading. Very soothing.
You're talking about the theater of the absurd and the theater of the wretched, and this type of theater represents an unnatural plane of existence, a world where we neither aspire to nor want, where strength of character is eclipsed by the unfairness of life's realities. Surely this is not the world the founders envisioned, as they considered the elevation of character to be the glue that holds our republic together.
Thank you.
I'll let you take off on that.
Well, I think that the whole issue of victimization, I think, has become so much in the forefront of today's art. And I'll just speak for theater, but I can tell you this.
Oh my God! Yeah, no, I'm gonna shut up. Go ahead.
Right now I'm working from home, and I have been since March of 2020. But prior to that, I would go into the office building. I work for the state of Ohio, and I go into the office building, and they had artwork by young people, and they were showcasing artwork. And I'm standing there and looking at this, and you can't imagine, or maybe you can, how much misery, horror, ugliness you see. And of course, there are a few that aren't. But there's, one I remember was was one canvas with 4 pictures on it, 4 drawings of young people hooked up to tubes and in hospitals. What is this saying to me? I mean, this is supposed to make me feel enlightened. I mean, I like to think that art in some way is going to enlighten me, embolden me, and even if I look at tragedy, right, I'm going to see something that I can consider redemptive. And there was nothing redemptive in that. This was hopelessness and horror. And I'm very sorry for the people who feel that way, but there's a ton of people in this country who don't. We just need to speak up. But the whole, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to once I said, wait a minute, there's a dialogue. These people aren't talking. They want to talk. They want to argue systemic. They want to argue unfair. They want to argue slavery. They want to argue, but no, that's not the issue. There's following McKee. There's 3 levels of dialogue. What's going on? And I had these arguments. They would erupt out of nowhere. And I finally said to them, let's take the situation of race. I said, you know who you're really mad at? I said, you're mad at God. I said, this is all God's fault. I said, if God did it right off, God would have made everybody one color. And we would not have had these discussions. I said, but you know what you're really mad at? You're mad at life itself. And I said, you're mad at yourselves. You hate yourself. Hence, you have to make misery for the rest of it. Because if you were operating on an elevated plane and you were experiencing joy, bliss, generosity, caring for your fellow man, you wouldn't come to them trying to create conflict. You wouldn't be destroying cities. You wouldn't be tearing down statues. You'd be talking about creating something.
That's right. I think you're absolutely right. And I think this self-loathing is more and more evident. among people. And part of it, again, I go back to blaming the education system, because they're not taught that there's another way anymore. Western civilization is now this almost elective thing that you could take, but we'd rather you take all these other things. And it's become, people don't understand it. Listen, I'm sorry, I get worked up about this. We are a very ignorant country. We are a very ignorant country. Do you know how far we have fallen behind other countries in many, many subjects? Because schools are wasting their time talking about social justice and how awful white men are. And
but where did that start? I mean, there's one theory that it's been done intentionally
I would agree with
to intentionally dumb down everybody for control.
Absolutely. Oh no, I believe that fully. An educated populace is a great danger to these people.
Right. But
so, because then they would realize that there is something bigger and something grander about this country. And I'm telling you, I believe that once they find that out, that this country is a lot more unique among the world's countries, but is something a lot more important, a lot more virtuous than it is being portrayed now. Once they understand that, I think they will honestly push back and say, wait a minute, this is a much better way of life.
Well, one of the things that Rebecca and I, you mentioned it, and you said, the founding fathers mentioned a naughty word today, God.
Right.
And they believed in it. And what Rebecca and I, before we got on with you, we sensed that that's where they knew that they were being divinely guided. That group of men, another naughty word,
right.
That group of individuals came along at a time in history where nobody's paying attention to what they did. They overthrew the greatest empire the world had ever seen, the mightiest empire, the English Empire. And they risked everything. They risked their not just their money, not their family. They risked their lives to fight, to stand up for independence and for an intangible like freedom. Mm-hmm. But how do you get Franklin and Adams and Washington and Jefferson? I mean, imagine the level of IQ in that room. I mean, and to see that they created a thought and a movement based on thought and rationality and belief in a higher power.
Yes.
And to me, this is where, and Rebecca and I talk about this all the time, this is what steps in, because we call it, I'll let you talk now, Rebecca, we call it a battle of good and evil.
Yeah, well, and ultimately good does win out.
Yes.
Right, Robert?
I believe that.
I believe that too, because evil doesn't really have any power, even though it likes to look like it does. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, when it's all said and done, a lot of these people that think they're getting away with things are going to crumble.
They're going to crumble. I absolutely agree. And to your point about the founders, they were very wise men. And they were very learned men. Where are they getting from what are they formulating their theories? It's not out of whole cloth, right? They are looking back as recently in their time to John Locke, mm-hmm. but they're going back to the original conception of Western civilization of Athens and Jerusalem. They're going right back there. And that's why I think some of those classic plays like Oedipus Rex have endured, because they speak to that natural sense of what it means to be human. I'm saying it inarticulately, exactly. But I think that's it.
Exactly. Aristotle, I mean, they were talked about the good. Plato, he talked about the good.
The good.
Right. The Republic, talking about what constitutes a great form of government is the benevolent dictator in those times, even though they were a democracy. These are the people who created democracy.
That's right.
And Aristotle talking about the golden mean, you know, that we recognize that. And it was what Da Vinci was about. You know, Da Vinci, when the Da Vinci Code was about that optimum that we all know that resonates with us as individuals. So when you see a great play or you see a great piece of work, it resonates so deep inside, it resonates with that human nature of ours. And that is just saying, no, today it's all up for open. There are no such thing as those natural laws. It's simply what we decide as an individual.
Right. Well, that we'll see where that gets them, because, well, we see where it's getting the rest of us, but we'll see where that gets them, because again, as we've discussed, I think that's going to eventually implode. You know,
well, there's a great book that Rebecca and I are familiar with called Power versus Force. And, you know, I feel, both Rebecca and I feel that we're on a divine path, and that we've had so many miracles in our life to lead us in the direction that we're taking now. And when that book came to me, I said, that wasn't just the individual handing to me. It was coming from something more powerful. And basically, it was written by a scientist who was using kinesiology to measure levels of consciousness, levels of emotion. And he said the worst three emotions an individual can experience, a human can experience, are shame, fear, and guilt. And as we moved out, as an individual moves into courage and then into pride and then crosses over, he had a logarithmic scale. He said, and it went all the way to creativity and the highest being love and spirit, that's where true power is. Force is things like guns and conflict and physical force. It can't hold up to the higher realms of power.
Yeah. Well, that's when you get into the miracle realm, when you're in the higher vibrations of love and empathy and kindness and all the good stuff. And it will win out eventually. But what a crazy time to see everybody just going through being all stirred up and confused.
Right. Well, you know, ironically, I think in some ways it might be a blessing that we have this President Biden. It's hard for me to say that, but we have this president, because I think his actions are going to point out exactly what's, you know, his actions are going to make people say, this can't be right.
Right.
Can't be right. And when you, as I said, with the Supreme Court, with what he's doing at the border, which is an absolute disaster, right? With all the giveaways.
Well, Trump already start, you know, trouble with the Russians and it's ridiculous.
And he's as corrupt as they come, and he always has been.
Yeah.
So, you know, but again, it might be a blessing in disguise.
Exactly. Well, that's, you know, Rebecca and I have reached that point. The only thing that gives us peace is let them have it. Let them create the chaos. Let them create the anarchy. And with it, it has no power. And people will start to say, oh, is this what the experiment you were looking for? Now have it. Now live with it. And where do you go from here?
Right. I agree.
We got to put this back together. You know, one of the things I wanted to do, I saw, again, why you resonated with me was back in the, before the turn of the century, I had seen Rent.
Yeah.
And I heard all the hype about Rent. And I went to see it in downtown Boston. It was the National Touring Company. And I went in there with the anticipation, wow, this is really, with all the critical acclaim for this is going to be a great experience. When I got to it, I felt totally cheated. I sat there and went, what? I paid top dollar for this, and I saw everybody screaming at the top of their lungs in approbation for these degenerates.
Right.
You know, degenerates occupying a place, and they, in their righteousness, we have a right to this property. We don't have to pay rent. And you know, of course, they had to throw in, AIDS and a death by AIDS, so that everybody could feel even worse.
Right.
And I said, so not, and then I happened to meet a gal, and she wanted to see, this is a couple of years later, Angels in America. And again, I went with all this. Oh my God! I mean, who could? It was everywhere. This is the new theater. This is the age of enlightenment. Blah blah blah. So I go and same thing. At the end of the play, I'm like, what? So I mentioned to her casually. I said, I would just like to go to theater and come away with all my money and time invested and feel uplifted.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I would like to go to theater where I wasn't being fed a political agenda.
Right.
I said, but this is simply a medium to try to convince me more that and convert me to the idea that the world is hopeless and there's nothing but victims.
Yes.
And she went off of me because she, had her own preferences. But that's where I started to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you mentioned Mercury and Fur, is that how you say the title?
Which one? I'm sorry.
I think you mentioned neither you or there's another article that had a similar message to yours.
That wasn't what you mentioned wasn't me.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't I?
There was another play where the last scene again, same thing. A bunch of guys who are degenerates who are selling illegal drugs, living in a squalor. And the last scene, they mutilate a child.
Oh, God.
And this is getting world attention as the new theater. And I'm thinking, like you, thank God there's a voice like you.
Well, thank you. Look, I'm trying to think, I was trying to look through the article because there was a picture that the Epic Times put in there of Mercury Fur. That's what you're referring to.
That's it.
Scene from Philip Ridley's Mercury Fur. I wasn't familiar with it, and now that you've mentioned what's in it, I have no interest in it. A couple of things. Number one, I felt the same way when I saw the play which you referenced, Next to Normal. I saw this at a college production, and at a time when this got great reviews and was very, very popular, and you would hear local actors playing, oh, I want to be in Next to Normal. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching this piece about a drug addict, a woman who's addicted to drugs. I'm sorry she's addicted to drugs, but she's addicted to drugs, who, of course, that's number one, of course. Number two, her baby died young, of course. And the child is coming back now to haunt her. But the other thing is that, of course, the family is destroyed by all this. She's getting more psychopathic. And the world around her is psychopathic as well. So the therapist whom she goes to is, of course, psychotic and wants to have his way with her. We know what that means. So it frames not only that this person has some issues, but that the world in general, there's no respite in this world. And that's why the title comes from the best you can be is next to normal. You can't be normal. You have to kind of be next to it. And I think it is everything that is wrong with theater today. The lyricist and the playwright, this team, they also wrote a play called a musical that was very popular called If Then. And it was the same thing. We watched this nondescript woman talking about the decision she made in life and how each one was worse than the other. And of course, there was the obligatory attack on Republicans in there. They have to throw that in. You have to throw that in. But when you look at plays like, let's say, Long Day's Journey into Night, or Streetcar Named Desire, or Death of a Salesman, these are not laugh fests. Okay, these are difficult, tragic, if you will, with people going through a lot of terror in many ways. But you don't see the world outside of these characters as being particularly mad or corrupt or anything. Sure. Or maybe corrupt, they might be corrupt, but you don't see them being as absurd as people like to think the world is. The world is operating just fine. In A Long Day's Journey into Night, everything's working fine. It's the Tyrones that are having the issue. Okay, so so O'Neill is smart enough. Look at The Iceman Cometh. That play is 4 hours of well, first of all, it's 4 hours of sadness in many ways, but it's also 4 hours of hilarity. If you've ever seen a production of The Iceman Cometh, which I did with Jason Robards when it was revised in New York City, it's a very funny play. Waiting for Godot, when
Yeah.
done correctly, is a very funny play.
Yes. Yes.
And that's just in that alone is its redemptive quality. As a yes, Streetcar is not a particularly funny play, but you do feel, in my opinion, that you walk out of a decent production of Streetcar, and you feel as though you've gotten something.
You've been
Either
elevated.
either the beauty of the dialogue, which I mean, obviously Williams was a master, or the poignancy of what happened to her. And again, she may be the problem, but the world is operating fairly well despite Blanche Dubois.
Yes.
That's my opinion. That's my take on it.
Yes. And there is folks, we hate to tell you this, but there is an order to the world.
Yes.
There is an order to the universe. And where do you think that came from? I mean, I love these people who want to put together a proposition that it's all random,
Right.
yet there is order everywhere.
Right.
And
absolutely.
there's this, we're willing to throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Absolutely. And the founders recognize this too. There is an order. There is a natural order.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
we're gonna, I think we should kind of wind this up. Do you want to say anything to put it last words, Robert?
Well, I just hope that your followers here will take a look at what I've written about the natural theater, and maybe check out my website, which is, if I may, conservativefestivaloh.com.
Right.
It's all one word. I'm from New York, Woid. Conservativefestivaloh.com. I'm going to be revamping my my website so that it's now going to start talking about the natural theater instead of conservative theater. And I do think that that's going to be more equalizing. It's going to bring people together, I think, a little bit more. I'm hoping so, because at the end of the day, the only thing I'm asking for with my theater company is to have a seat at the table. I'm not asking to take over. I'm asking to have a seat at a round table. And up until now, we have not, people who think like me are really not invited in the world of diversity and inclusion.
Wonderful. How ironic.
They don't know what they're missing. You're so delightful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I agree with you. I mean, thank you.
Robert, can I ask, again, I saw this, I'm going to get a little personal. First of all, I'll make it as palatable as possible. I lost my leg at the age of 13.
Really?
Which, I had a form of cancer that if 100 kids got, 95 died. So that was the first miracle. And it's a miracle every single day that I'm alive. And Rebecca and I both feel she also dealt with cancer and had a miracle. And we just have this amazing appreciation for this miracle of life.
Yes.
And all its grandeur and all its beauty and all of its love and everything else. And did I see a picture of you? Is it a character? Are you, I saw a wheelchair. Was I just seeing something weird or?
There was a picture of me on my website. I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm just sitting down, and I had age makeup on, and this was from a play I wrote called The Flower Stand, which was produced in New York City. And it actually was me and my daughter as the two characters. And I played an 80-something-year-old man. That might be what you're thinking of.
When I saw it, I said to Rebecca, I think he's in a wheelchair.
No, I have lots of aches and pains and have trouble getting around in my, I'm 58, and I know you both think I look younger, and I do appreciate you thinking that. But I'm not there yet. I'm not in a wheelchair. No.
Okay, great. And well, again, this is what kind of alerted me, and my whole life has been dedicated to, and it hit me the other day. I get these divine inspirations that for a long time, I went from being able to disabled in society's term, which I never accepted. But there was a big movement in the disabled movement about breaking down barriers. You see, that becoming barrier free. And then I realized that that's what I've done my entire life, is taking barriers, both physical and imagined, and societal, psychological, all of those, in defying those barriers and breaking them down. So, and I teach empowerment to inner city schools. And I teach individuals. So when people come to me and I said, why, Rebecca always say, why do you get so excited about this? And I started because it resonates with the core of who I am.
Yes.
And that is to deliver a message of empowerment, that you are a powerful being that is connected to a powerful source. And so when you try to preach to me that, no, you can't because the system is stronger than you, I go crazy.
Right.
You know, it's very difficult for me to swallow that.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
So
that's why we need to channel that energy into things like this, interviews, Zoom calls, talking to people like Robert, who are definitely doing some good work.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to have met both of you, and I hope
yeah. Well, I hope we do more, Robert.
We can absolutely do more.
Yeah,
I can absolutely do more. I've enjoyed this very much. I felt you did a great job putting me at ease.
Good.
You know, everybody says that. I tell them you won't even know that we're being videoed.
Right.
It'll be a chat amongst friends. So
absolutely.
I know, I feel, Rebecca and I, when we started doing this with people like you, it's helped us take our minds off of the negative and move to a place when we get through. I know from this, and I hope the people that we did attract to this, I hope it does the same. I hope you will resonate for days.
I hope so. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well,
that would be great. Thank you very much, both of you. And I hope to see you again.
Okay. Thanks, Robert.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Right.
Oh, there you are. I finally found the screen. Hi, Rebecca. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
All right. Rebecca, what do you think? Are you there? Oh, she left. Well, thank you for tuning in, folks. That's Tom. I'm Tom Hayes. The name of the podcast is Upbeat. We hope we were upbeat. we took a little temptation, got a little, got a little riled up, but it resonates with us. We have a belief that life is way more than pessimism or being a victim. So God bless you all. Thank you. And please come back, because we're going to have more talks about how to actualize and be happy. Thanks again.